Hi, it's Aunt Fanny. Have you ever gone out and bought all of the ingredients for some great recipe that you were really craving and you just really wanted to cook that up, and then life happens, homeschool, kids, whatever it is. Just days go by and you're like, I just haven't had time to sit down and make this recipe. And then you realize, I got fresh vegetables. I need to hurry up and get them cooked up before they go bad in the fridge. So then you end up making the recipe when you're not really feeling the vibe to be cooking. Well, that happened to me the other day. I got all the ingredients to make this wonderful recipe of a potato and ham soup from Chef Billy Parisi. It looked like it was something that was so delicious and I could totally manage it. And it gave me a little bit of experience cooking with something that I hadn't cooked with. I've never used leeks before, and that was in the recipe. So I went ahead and I got all my stuff and it sat in the fridge, and then I was down to where I just had to start cooking it, and I was having just one of those days. So when I went to go make it, I tried to record it, but some things I totally forgot to record, other things I totally even forgot to do in the recipe. And I had to go back later and fix it, modify it, kind of try to make it work. And then other things I just said, you know what, this sounds good. I think I'm going to throw this in here too. And so I threw a little bacon in, and you know what? The soup turned out fantastic. My husband and my father-in-law both said it's the best soup they've ever had. And I just made that ham and bean soup the other day, and they loved that, and they said this tops it big time. Next time you're in that position, just be brave, do it, wing it. Even if you're not feeling like making it, make that recipe, try something new. So let's go make some potato and ham with a little bit of extra bacon soup. Thanks, Chef Billy Parisi. I didn't have broth, so I went ahead and made some using chicken cubes and cups of water, and I just boiled those. And then I'm going to go ahead and caramelize the onions, as Chef Billy recommends, to definitely take that time, 30 to 45 minutes, to just go ahead and saute them with unsalted butter. And so I did that. I did have to play with the temperature a little bit because I did get them a little bit too cooked too fast for a minute. And here's those leeks that I've never used. So I went ahead and cut off anything that was kind of greenish because they get a little more bitter. And then I cut them down, and then dirt can get down inside of those leeks, so I went ahead and rinsed them really well, and then I set them aside. And they kind of have a flavor like in the onion family. So there's my broth. It's doing great. It's just what I needed. I did throw in an extra cube just so I had a little extra in order to cook down and deglaze the pan, which is the step that I did forget. So I'm cutting up some garlic as well here. So after I do this onions, then I'm supposed to add in the garlic to the pan, and then I got some carrots and some celery. Now here I'm taking my celery top and I'm throwing it in that bag that I keep in the freezer that has all of my cut pieces of my vegetables, so that when it's time to make a bone broth or any type of broth, I can just go ahead and use these remnants of vegetables and get really good flavor for that broth to boil it together with my chicken bones or whatever it is I decide to use. So I'm cutting up some celery and some carrots, and those are supposed to go in after I throw the leeks and the garlic in and then deglaze the pan. And that is the part that I totally skipped over in the recipe. And so I ended up putting the leeks, the garlic, the carrots, and the celery all in at the exact same time. And then I had to come back and try to sort of deglaze the pan with everything in there. And I didn't know if it was going to work, but it turned out just fine. I don't use any type of wine in our house, so I just used an extra cup of broth to do that with, actually about a half a cup. And here I am peeling the potatoes. One little trick that I use is I put a bag in my sink, and then I just go ahead and peel right into that bag and then just pick it up and throw it in the trash. It makes for easy cleanup, and I'm not hunched over a trash can or anything like that. So I'm just going to wash those potatoes up. Here I am throwing everything into the pan all at once, and I'll come back to it later realizing my mistake and throw some broth in there. So I'm just cutting up all these potatoes here into bite-sized pieces, dicing it up, throwing it into a bowl of water to keep it from turning brown. And here's where I decided I'd like a little bit of bacon in there. I'm sure the ham was enough, but you can't say no to bacon. So I'm saving a little bit of that bacon grease off. I just nuked this bacon actually in the microwave, and now I'm just cutting it up into little teeny tiny little pieces to just kind of mix throughout the whole thing. So I threw it in there and mix in all those flavors up. So here I'm just going to strain off those potatoes, and I think it's right at this moment that I realize I did not deglaze the pan. I did not put any of the broth in there to kind of make like a roux, and so I'm fixing that now. So I put in about a half a cup because I did make a little bit extra broth. I actually made 11 cups worth of broth, even though I only needed 10. With the intention of using it to deglaze the broth. So here is a bit of the broth. I put it into a measuring cup that I'm adding flour to. I'm putting 3/4 of a cup of all-purpose flour, and I'm mixing it into that measuring cup before I pour it into my soup. The recipe says just to pour all the broth into the soup all at once with the potatoes and all the vegetables, and then add the flour and mix and whisk really, really, really well. Well, I prefer to take that flour and mix it in with the broth on the side in a smaller container and try to get all those lumps worked out, and then work that smaller container in with everything else. And it tends to produce less lumps in the whole pot of soup. So here I am, I've poured in the entire thing of broth, and now I'm just adding in that floured broth, and that's going to allow that soup to thicken. And I mixed it very, very, very well. Now I'm adding some heavy whipping cream. Once I'm done doing all of the whisking and adding that heavy cream, I'm going to go ahead and turn that up and let it boil for about 10 or 15 minutes and get those potatoes nice and cooked. In that meantime, I'm going to go over to the ham here, and this is just some leftover holiday ham. I'm cutting all the excess fat off, some of the skin off where there's quite a bit of it, and that's just to whatever your taste is. We don't really care that much. So I'm just dicing up about 4 cups of ham, and I'm going to add that to the pot once it has cooked for about 10 or 15 minutes and softened up those potatoes. And then once the soup is nice and thick, I'm going to go ahead and add that ham, salt and pepper, some Worcestershire sauce, however you say that, also some parsley and Tabasco. And I'm going to mix that until it's combined, and each one of those things is going to kind of be to your flavor of whatever it is that you like. If you like it a little bit with a hot bit to it, then add a little bit more Tabasco. Here I am cutting up the parsley and adding it to the end there. You could also use some dried parsley if you didn't have anything fresh. So I let this kind of simmer and sit for just a little bit and allow it to thicken up a little bit more while I'm testing it and getting a little flavor there. As you can see, it's not that thick right now. I did end up going back and adding some cornstarch and cold water. I did 3 tablespoons cornstarch and 6 tablespoons of cold water, and added that to try to make it thicken up. And it took it a while to thicken up, but it did eventually thicken up. So you can see here's where it was still a little bit thin. The soup just turned out so good. So good. So you can top it with some green onions, some sour cream, some more Tabasco, whatever it is. So good. Go make some.